Welcome to Red Alert. I'm Joe.
I'm Cindy.
We actually went back to that because Cindy was pissed off that I kept, saying, "This is Cindy."
You were being kind of dismissive, I thought. That's all.
Because you're really, really tired. Obviously, you've had a couple of excruciating days, with the election and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So
It's been challenging.
I thought I'd guide you along like a little pigeon.
Like a little, like you thought I even forgot my name. I've had such a stressful week. I'm a professional, sir. I'm a pro. I got this.
Obviously, you can tell that we're in Detroit. So
Yes,
we are
because you hear
Little-
the sirens.
Yeah, we are at Little Caesars Arena.
Yes, if you are watching us on our YouTube channel, which you need to subscribe to if you're listening to us on one of the podcast
We'll have a
platforms.
link in the comments. So
Link in the comments, click it, and you'll be able to see that we are here at LCA with a beautiful mural of my man, Steve Eiserman, in the background. It
And
doesn't get any better.
We're right on the concourse outside the Bud Light beer thing, which actually is really enticing right now. But what's really enticing is the Red Wings have $10 million in cap space. Will they use it? There's rumors that Nazem Kadri is a guy who the Red Wings could go after. Do you think that they should go after him?
No,
I agree.
I don't. I don't think he's the right fit for Detroit. However, do I think that Steve should spend the cap? I do. I think he should spend that cap money. I think there are some other assets, though, that he could acquire that would bring more value to the Red Wings as opposed to Kadri. I don't think Kadri quite fits the mold. I think he's a great guy, but does not fit Detroit. I think there's some better options to spend that cap space. What do you think?
Well, I have a very, very particular player I really want to go after. And I know he's not the same player he was. I don't really like Nazem Kadri. I think Andrew Kopp is a better player. He's less of a risk. Nazem Kadri likes to get suspended a lot. He's always, and aside from his Colorado days, when he was in Toronto, he wasn't the best player to be around. The guy I'm looking at is a guy who's a right-handed shot. He's on the defense. And it's my man, PK Subban.
How did I know it was
Now
going to be
listen.
PK Subban?
PK Subban would be great for this roster because there's one player on the roster that would benefit from having PK Subban on this team. That's Filip Hronek. Filip Hronek is a guy just like PK Subban. PK Subban had to learn from Shea Weber he had to learn from going to Nashville when he did. He was learning from Roman Josi.
Yep.
He learned how to play the game the right way, and he learned that you can take risks, but you also have to be sound in your defensive end. One of the things PK Subban really just got better at as his career went along, and obviously when he went to New Jersey, no one heard from him again because that's where I think careers go to die. But I think PK Subban coming to Detroit Red Wings would be very, very luxurious.
It would be a luxury to have PK Subban, and I think it would be exciting. However, I have a different take on it. Instead of spending all that cap space on PK Subban, because right now his cap it was at $9 million.
No, you wouldn't spend a lot because you're not expecting him to be that kind of player. And if you want that kind of money, well, he can go.
I just don't think you're going to get PK Subban here for too much less than that $9 million.
I'll give him $3-4 million.
He'd laugh you out of the office.
He's not getting that $9 million.
I agree. He's probably not getting the $9 million, but I think he's going to want something close.
No, he's
if he comes for $7 million, maybe.
He's not coming for $7 million. He's going to get laughed out of the building if he does that to any team, because the reality of the situation is he needs to remember where he's at in his career. He's not a spring chicken anymore. He's an older person. You're an older.
Oh, here we go with the old people.
You're an older person, so there's some things that
you're age shaming me, Joe. I feel age shamed right now.
You're about to have a birthday. You're gonna get a year older. There's some things that you did before that you can't do like you did when you were younger.
And there's some things I do a lot better now that I'm older. Just saying.
Stop.
You young thing.
And listen, that's what it comes down to. Is he's gotta. So
I had to get you a little uncomfortable.
Where would you go in terms of this cap space? Because there's one thing that I'm looking at is. I think the way that Steve Yzerman will spend this cap space is by re-signing Dylan Larkin.
Absolutely, I think
extending him.
I think he's going to extend him, and I think he's probably going to give him more money. I think you're probably going to see Dylan Larkin falling somewhere in the $7 to $8 million range, probably.
Yeah, that would be a major hometown discount.
Sure.
So the one thing I was reading about
Well, and he's gonna want a multi-year contract. He's gonna want to lock him in for an extended period of time. He's gonna want to keep him here his entire career, and I
Yeah.
think that Dylan Larkin and the Red Wings have that in common as far as that's what they both want. The question's going to be the number and where they're going to fall. But even with that, Steve's still going to have cap space left. The question is he going to spend it on assets he currently has to retain those assets, or is he going to acquire a new asset? You were talking, you liked PK Subban. If we're going to go into the acquiring assets area,
Who would you go?
I think I'd rather see him get a twofer. Let's pick up maybe a guy like maybe a Calvin DeHaan. Okay, maybe we pick up a Calvin DeHaan at
That'd be
$3
nice.
$4 million, right? And then you can go a little bit deeper into the UFAs or maybe go into the RFAs and see if there's somebody that's worth maybe spending another million or two. Maybe bringing on, he's got the defense. Maybe bring on another backup, forward, maybe another winger. So I think Steve is like that. Steve wants to get the biggest bang for his buck. And when it comes to spending that cap space, I think he's going to probably get the biggest distance out of it. If he chooses to acquire, that's how I would acquire. But he may choose not to spend it at all.
I don't think he's going to spend it at all. One of the things about Stevie Y that we have come to notice is one thing. He's very calculated in his decisions. He's very calculated in the way he spends money. And unlike other general managers in this town, he actually spends money the smart way. The one thing that you like about Brett Holmes, Stevie Y, Troy Weaver is they spend money in the right way. They know where they're at in the organization. They know where they're at in the phase that they are organizationally. Stevie Y understands that. I think what he's going to do is going to be like, okay, I know Larkin, I know Bertuzzi are going to need contracts. What do I do with that money? A lot of bad general managers, they don't think about the future. They think about the present. And that's the problem with a lot of teams. Like, I was reading a stat. There was only one player who has made north of $10 million that has played in a Stanley Cup Finals game. That is the issue that you have in the cap world, in the cap era. Obviously, if you're a team like Toronto, you got to pay more for a player because of taxes.
Right.
If you're in Canada, you got to pay more for taxes. This is the issue with the cap, and you're going to start to see it. But with Stevie Y, he's calculating that, and he's saying, listen, I got enough money right here. If a player goes down, I can make a trade. Maybe I can make a free agent signing.
Yeah.
Give him a flexibility. I know in the NFL, one of the things that they do is they have a $10 million kind of pool. In case a player goes down, they can go out and sign a free agent. In case something happens, they can go out and do something if they need to. That's why a lot of these teams in the NFL do is the salary cap. They predicate it to this $10 million bonus that they think that, like, if something happens, we can kind of manage it because we got the money to. And a lot of teams that are bad, they don't manage it. And they don't manage it well.
Well, certainly, and not only is Steve calculated, he's probably got this planned out from now till the time the Stanley Cup is in his hands. I believe that. And he's got it already planned out. And the question is, he's just waiting for the opportunity. And I think he wants to make sure he has that cap space available when and if that perfect storm or opportunity comes up. So I don't think we're going to see him spend it, except for, as you pointed out, I do think he's going to spend what he needs to spend to retain Dylan Larkin on a long-term extension. Also, the issue you brought up Tyler Bertuzzi. And Tyler Bertuzzi, aside from Zadina and Hronek possibly leaving, he's the one that everyone talks about as being the subject of trade. I don't think that's going to happen. I'll say it again. I will be surprised if Steve lets Tyler Bertuzzi go somewhere else. I think you're going to see Tyler Bertuzzi signed to a longer-term contract extension as well, because I think he doesn't want to mess with what's working. And Tyler Bertuzzi works with Dylan Larkin. Tyler Bertuzzi works with a lot of these new guys that are brought on. And I think that he's not going to risk losing. It would be an opportunity cost by giving up Tyler Bertuzzi and trying to bring on somebody else and trying to get the wheel reinvented and so forth. The other guy who I think is going to have an awful lot to say about what happens with that cap space or a lot of influence, is going to be his new head coach, Derek Lalonde. I mean, he's going to have a lot to say about what his needs are, and I think that Steve is going to reserve that cap space in order to address whatever needs that his new head coach identifies here in the early part of the season.
So yeah, it's gonna be interesting the way they go about it. But you know, one of the things that's happening right now, as we're doing the podcast, I'm reading this from someone who is from New York Islanders hockey now. He says Brock Nelson to the Red Wings, Matthew Barzal, Lane Lambert will have some decision to make if the Isles bring in center Nazem Kadri.
Mm.
So another person says, I wouldn't sleep on Stevie Y trying to help Lou's cap situation. In the process, acquire Barzal, which is the center.
Yep.
It's that signs Kadri. It's a win. And he can be a win now move and moves Barzal and addresses the future. I this is just come. I didn't think we would be getting some breaking news on Red Alert, but we are.
And we do stay on top of that so that we can bring it to you literally as we get it. And I'll tell you, oftentimes you'll find here on Red Alert that you're going to hear it here first because obviously we have people. And so we're always on top of what's going on. There's going to be game changers that are going to happen along the way here. And, there's also taking a strategic move in terms of a defensive move in perhaps acquiring players or keeping other teams from acquiring players.
See, one of the things I noticed about the Red Wings, there's one thing that I noticed. They are going to take advantage of someone's cap situation.
Exactly. They're aware of what is going on.
Because in the NHL, there's teams that are up against the cap that don't have the money to, and they're going to be starting to unload players.
Yep.
I think that's what Stevie Y has been predicated
waiting for. Yeah.
I think when, because you got to understand, like, it's like a wounded animal. When you have the time to strike, you could strike really, really quickly. It's interesting because there's a lot of teams in that cap situation.
Yeah, a lot of teams are going to find themselves kind of backed into a corner, and they'll have fewer options. And one thing that Stevie Y is brilliant at is keeping those option lines open. So not only is he looking at options to acquire assets, he's also looking for options or opportunities to keep people from acquiring assets or put them in a position where they need to compromise their assets and do something that they otherwise wouldn't do. So he, again, Steve was great at this. Not only is he playing the game, he's creating the plays. And he's doing the same thing as a GM. He is creating the situations that he wants to have occur. Now, obviously, he doesn't have control over everything, but he's certainly smart enough and obviously connected enough to push all the right buttons to help steer things in the direction he wants them.
These are the teams that are in the cap. They are negative cap space right now. Tampa Bay, Washington, Edmonton, Florida, Vancouver, Philadelphia, Columbus, Toronto, Pittsburgh, Vegas, and then you have guys like Montreal, St. Louis, the Rangers, Seattle. Most of these teams, there is half the league has less than $1 million in cap space. That is a really big issue. And you talk about Seattle. They almost have just $1 million in cap space. How the hell do you have $1 million in cap space as a rebuilding team?
So isn't it interesting that the position Steve has put himself in is he's sitting there on $10 million in cap space,
which is
which
is seventh in the NHL, and the teams that are ahead of you, like Arizona, Chicago, who keeps unloading players,
and nobody wants to go to Chicago because they're a dumpster fire right now.
No one wants to go to Arizona either. I mean,
the organizations are a mess, so it doesn't matter. They can have all the cap space in the world. Nobody wants to go there because who wants to be miserable? I mean, it's just that they're just a hot mess.
I think in the next segment, we're going to be talking about Matthew Barzal because this is an issue that I really want to get to the forefront. Obviously, the Red Wings have $10 million cap. That's seventh in the NHL. Is Matthew Barzal a guy that you want to go get?
I think Steve's going to look at that. And again, when we talk about this, proves my point. This proves the point that we just made here on Red Alert, and that is Steve is a playmaker. He is creating an environment to be able to take advantage of these things. And look at where he's at. He's sitting there in a very comfortable cap space position. The teams that have more cap space or equal cap space to the Detroit Red Wings are teams people don't want to go to. So you're really limiting options for players who are looking for both a high-quality organization with a chance to get into the postseason and make a good run for the Cup and can afford to pay them. And let's face it, when Stevie Y gets on the other end of the phone, you're answering the phone.
Yeah.
So he's beautifully positioned.
I know
right
that's okay. This is how it goes with general managers. Okay, when Al Avila calls another general manager, they go yes. When
my
Stevie
God.
Y calls the general manager, they go,
Say,
"Oh
oh
my god!"
shit.
Oh, God. Like I might get played. It's like
Like, what does he want?
it's like when a hot chick calls an ugly guy, right? When they call,
You know something's up.
you know that like she gonna be wanting some cash, or she gonna be like trying to be like, "Can you take me out?" Like
There's gonna be a price for her.
there's gonna be a price to pay.
Yeah, that's right.
And with Stevie Y, when he calls another general manager, there's gonna be a price to pay. But we're gonna get to that in the next segment. Matthew Barzal, would he be a fit as a Detroit Red Wing? We'll let you know in the next segment.
Let's do it.